Great. This is one of those audios that I am recording based on an idea that popped into my head. So it's not fully formed, not like a fully formed seminar. It's not even based on a section or a line or a thought in particular, other than the idea of form versus content. So we start with the contradictions. Previously, I've gone over some of the more obvious contradictions in the course, where within the same sentence, literally, it says contradictory things. Um, Generally speaking, in terms of the contradictions, we're talking about different levels, that the bodily level experience, like the idea that you join with your brother and your brother's a body, while at the same time, the course makes the explicit statement that your brother cannot be a body. To see your brother as a body is to hate him and wish him dead. And it's only done, the only reason to see your brother as a body is to prove that you're a body. So without going into all of the contradictions, let's just start off with the recognition. The course is loaded with seemingly contradictory ideas. The world is loaded with contradictory ideas. We are loaded with seemingly contradictory ideas. So contradiction is all around us. We can't avoid it. We make choices within those contradictions. My teacher, Ken Wapnick, would speak in what would seem to be contradictory terms too. If somebody went to him upset about something, distraught, he would say, join with something. Join with your dog, your partner, an idea, a book, a movie. Join with something. And it did absolutely seem like he was saying join with form, join with something at the level of form. Ken was able to move between the levels seamlessly, and the content was always experienced as loving. So, of course, the teacher of the Course in Miracles is not saying your body should go be in the same place at the same time as this other body, and that's what joining is. Joining doesn't happen at the level of the world because nothing happens at the level of the dream. The dream has no substance. The content within the message to join is the idea of joining itself. So if we think about content as being ideas, abstraction, and form being, the little clay house we try to shove those ideas into so that they look like something, not just look like something, but prove the separation happened to us, then we're really missing out on what the practice of the course really involves. Because if you play around at the level of form and only see things happening in the world, the only thing accomplished is maintaining the dream of separation. And that's not bad. It's not sinful. It's just not going to make us happy, as Jesus tries to tell us over and over again. You can do this. You didn't commit a sin. You didn't do anything. Not one note in heaven song was missed, but it's not going to make you happy. And so how do I get you to have some motivation to learn the course, save through sight of all your misery? I don't want to go off too much on a tangent about this because I want to stick with the form and content. To the ego, when we identify with the ego, if the form is acceptable, the content must be. So I see something or I hear something and I like it. There's a rainbow. Whether or not I use that rainbow to prove the separation happened has nothing to do with the form itself. The content is my contribution based on where I want to see myself, what I want to believe is the truth. The content itself is not dependent on any form at all. And that leads us to the responsibility for sight. I can see a world of ideas whenever I want to because it is apparent we live in a symbolic world, that we have our own experience and everything outside of us, we have no idea about that experience. We only know how we feel when we're around it or what we choose to feel. I saw Ken Wapnick as being a teacher who symbolized the content of the Holy Spirit thought system, that abstraction. Whatever he said was filtered through that belief, understanding, and experience. He could talk about joining with a book and a movie and a spouse and a dog. It was experienced as loving, not for the form, not for the literal words that were being said, but for the idea they represented. Those things represent the idea of joining, which reminds the mind of the Holy Spirit thought system, and things are seen differently through that filter. The fact that I do not see that content in every form is my responsibility. I have the responsibility to see the symbols, interpret the symbols, and decide on behalf of the ego, aka separation, or the Holy Spirit, aka joining. If I don't experience joining, if I don't experience taking the hand of Jesus and seeing through his eyes, it is never because of the form. No matter how awful that form seems to be, no matter how many allies I could gather in agreeing with me that the form is awful and the form is a complete bar to the experience of the peace of God, we're being taught something else. There is no form that can take the peace of God away from me. I have to allow it to. This is really going to end up being a repetition of all the other audios, but it's all the same thing. And as Jesus said, we're forgetful and we need reminders. This is just another reminder that the form can't hold back the love and peace of God unless I want it to. It's not just that I'm willing to let it do that. It's the desire. It's the desire that I need to look at. The desire is the insanity. Because while we didn't make a mistake, we chose, the ego thought, we chose to believe in separation. We wanted to believe in separation, and we did. The ending of the dream comes with the realization that there's nothing valuable in separation. There's nothing I want here. It's all ugly. We just need to look at it without the defenses and the coverings and the aspects we add to it to try to make it seem pretty, to try to make the tears seem like diamonds, try to make the blood seem like rubies. We add those things to what has no content at all. So when we go about our lives as egos, obviously the forms, figures shift and change, and our state seems to shift and change with them. And our state does absolutely seem dependent on the form. If we took the oxygen out of the room, everybody would start gasping. We definitely seem to be, the cause and effect here is a great magic trick that is very effective, seems very effective. Well, it's only very effective because we want it to be very effective. And it's so important to never deny the power that we have, because denying the power that got us here denies the power to get ourselves home. The content, on the other hand, which is the Holy Spirit thought system, that I'm specifically talking about the content of love, content of a reflection of love, a memory of love, has absolutely nothing to do with the form. If it had anything at all to do with the form, then the form would have the power to keep the peace of God away from me. Divorcing those two things, the image from the experience, is our task, just to recognize through the Course that they can't be related. The Course appeals to reason. And when we follow the Course's reasoning, if we accept the initial premises, we have to accept that conclusion. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire premises and conclusion, but there are certain premises that have to be accepted. God is love. God is not fear. The idea of non-duality being reality. If I follow the Course and I accept those things in addition to the other premises, the conclusion has to be reached. Form can't take away the peace of God from me, no matter what it looks like. Denying the denial of truth only means denying the cause of my experiences outside of me. That is what denying the denial of truth means. Not denying my experience, not denying how things seem, how real it seems, how vulnerable I seem, how subject to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune I seem to be. It acknowledges everything, excuse me. Nothing needs to be denied in order to recognize the truth of the Course. Nothing in the world needs to be denied. If you fight against it and try to say that, close your eyes and say, this isn't happening, that won't work. Our job to take Jesus's hand and look upon all things is not something that occurs, is a visible, physical exercise. It's the opposite of physical exercise. One thing I would like to add to this, which is really pretty important to me, and why I even started doing this, because I saw that people are teaching different interpretations of A Course in Miracles. And I'm not saying that that should be condemned, that it's bad or sinful. It's just incorrect. I don't really have original thoughts, not about the content, with what Ken taught and what the Course teaches and what Jesus teaches in his Course. What I believe and what I suppose teach or talk about comes from Jesus and Ken. It isn't just based on trust. Well, I trusted them, so now I'm going to go with them. No, it's an experience. And I saw it myself. When we talk about different forms, okay, I'm struggling a little to make a distinction here. Ken taught what the Course says. There are other teachers out there right now, some on the Foundation for Inner Peace Facebook group and website, that are teaching different versions. And I disagree with that, because the Course does, in fact, say one thing. And if you take away what a piece of what the Course is saying and make it say something else, on the one hand, that doesn't matter at all. Who cares, right? But in my fidelity to my teacher, and as a tribute to my teacher, I do want to be a voice saying that is incorrect. My motivation is the truth, to keep our eyes on the actual goal. We don't have to reach the goal ever. We don't have to want the goal, to at least see what Jesus says the goal is. When I see people talking about the Course and naming other teachers who are pretty diametrically opposed to Ken Wapnick, I think I can be the voice saying, no, that's not what the Course says. The Course will never be about making the world a better place. The Course will never be about making it seem as though an illusory world got better. That will never be what the Course is about. The Course is not about focusing on love and light. It's about focusing on the blocks to the awareness of the presence of love. It does say one thing: regardless of the apparent contradictions, they can be read together when you make a distinction between form and content. There is no mistaking in the Course that Jesus very much focuses on the ugliness that is the ego thought system, not to condemn it, but to point it out, because that is part of the motivation for joining with him. To simplify and distort and bastardize the course to make it more palatable is not helpful. You can do those things, just call it a different path. And that is what Ken would say. That is what Ken did say when he saw people doing it. Say, it's fine to do that. That is just a different path. That is not A Course in Miracles. It doesn't have to be done in anger. There doesn't have to be a grievance. There doesn't have to be condemnation or anything like that. It's just merely noting what it says and where it's leading. And again, we don't have to go where it's leading, but we do need to know where it's leading. That is a piece that is important. If we don't know where it's leading, we won't even be aware of our own resistance to it. It's a disservice. I guess it all boils down to my tribute to my teacher. I guess that's all it is. Because Ken said everything. All of his videos are out there for consumption. You don't need this audio from me, but I want to say it. And I feel moved to say it. And apparently it's part of the script that I say it. Ken talked about what the Course says, and other teachers do not. It's a blending of other paths. And I'm an Orthodox kind of Course student. I say this in the case it helps anyone who's confused. I literally see all of these different versions of the Course, and I think, I don't know. I personally don't get it. I needed one course, I wanted one course, and I wanted one teacher. To me, anything else is a different path. It's just a different path. If you agree with me, maybe it's for you. If you don't agree with me, I'm definitely not for you. Because when you take away the fundamental nature of the Course, that it is pointing to God from within a dualistic world. When you take away its purpose and its goal and alter that message, it robs it of its helpfulness. To me, also its beauty and purity. I am going to pull up one quote, if I can, while I'm doing this audio, because it's a really great quote. So I apologize for not having this ready, but it does speak to exactly what I'm talking about. I should be able to find it pretty quickly. Let's see. Okay, it might not be that easy. It is something like, boy, I think when I do find it, it's not going to seem as dramatic as I'm kind of making it by insisting on looking for it. Oh, okay, I found it. It's in chapter 29, The Awakening. And instead of reading just the line, I'm going to read the whole first part. There is no time, no place, no state where God is absent. There is nothing to be feared. There is no way in which a gap could be conceived of in the wholeness that is His. The compromise the least and littlest gap would represent in his eternal love is quite impossible, for it would mean his love could harbor just a hint of hate, his gentleness turned sometimes to attack, and his eternal patience sometimes fail. All this do you believe when you perceive a gap between your brother and yourself? How could you trust him then? For he must be deceptive in his love. Be wary then. Let him not come too close and leave a gap between you and his love, through which you can escape if there be need for you to flee. The compromise the least and littlest gap would represent in his eternal love is quite impossible. We cannot drag that gap along with us without recognizing and ignore this section without compromising the message. So we can understand, we can hear and understand the compromise the least and littlest gap would represent is quite impossible. So if there's no way God can harbor just a hint of hate, there is no way we can make a relationship between two figures in the dream mean something and be real and call it holy. And I guess that's what I'm railing against here. A holy relationship never happens in a hallucination. Only in the mind does the holy relationship happen between what we believe we are and that split off part of us that is represented by the Holy Spirit, the true Christ in us, our true reality. We cannot relate in peace to anything we believe is outside of us. It's not possible, and that's what the Course says, and that is a compromise, because that means there's gaps. That means there's different experiences. That means the separation happened. And what sees all of those things and believes them except the mind that is willing to be separate? We can be willing to be separate and experience everything in the world just like we're bodies while recognizing the Course is saying the separation never happened. So let's not drag this message into this world where love is barred and pretend we see love here. Forgetting the everything he describes about the special relationship, special hate, and special love, we can at least say when we do that, death is real. And we're accepting a compromise in which death plays a part. So whenever you hear someone trying to make lovely and beautiful and good anything where death is still real, that is not the goal of the Course. The goal of the Course is not to have a better dream. There is no better dream. So it's not like the goal of the Course is to have a worse dream. It's just to show you, to open our eyes up, to say, not only is there no better dream, there's no hope of happiness in a dream world of illusion. Jesus is basically saying, open your eyes, people. Do you see what you've denied? There's layers of denial we got to peel away to get to where we really are, where we want to be and where we really are. And the suffering we cling to and the judgment we cling to, the pain and the misery that we're so enamored with around here because it proves to us what we are, that will all fade and go away. We can learn how not to be deceived by it, even as we walk through it. If we walk through it with Him, recognizing our great companion, that we cannot walk alone. Walking alone is walking with a bunch of figures in a dream. We have Jesus, and He spoke to us, and He speaks to us through this Course, within our minds, beyond all form, beyond all figures and symbols. Forget about the symbols. They don't mean anything. You have to ask the Holy Spirit, what do they represent? What does it mean? What is my purpose? My purpose, truth. You know, when He says there is nothing to be feared, what can that mean to those of us who believe we're in a world terrified? Or or those of us in the world that know we're one antagonist away from terror. We're one antagonist away from being down on our knees. Is that a place we're really going to be able to carve out some comfort? I once wrote to Ken and I said, I can't get comfortable because when you study the Course, it becomes very obvious. You never could get comfortable. And he wrote back and he said, we'll be uncomfortable together. Because his content to me was always joining. The answer will always be joining with Jesus, not joining with anything in the world, not joining with a fragment of a senseless dream, but joining with Jesus. And what that means within the dream can look different for everyone. It is not dependent on form, but the message will reach you. In whatever way is most meaningful to you. I'll say to you and myself exactly what my teacher said. Join with something. And we can know there's only one thing to join with. We take Jesus' hand and we walk the same path together. And we will share in heaven together or not at all.